And then I was like, okay, I'm in my room. I'm completely naked. I look up, my clothes are on the far side of the room. I'm like, okay, I'm on my own. Where is this girl gone? And no sign of her, no trace. I was like, oh, fuck, right? Because my first reaction is, shit, what has happened here? Something bad has happened, right? I've obviously been unconscious. So, hey, всем привет. Welcome back for part 2 of episode 9 of my Vodka Vodcast. This episode was quite long, so if you missed part 1, go back and check it out either by looking on YouTube for the previous episode, or if you're listening to this on the podcast, then go back and find the previous episode of this podcast series, and then you can go listen to it before you listen to part 2. I've been telling you the stories about my very first trip to this country, to Ukraine. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and definitely whack the notification bell beside it so that you're notified whenever there are new videos uploaded here. I'm coming to the end of my time here in Odessa for the summer of 2019, but I am super excited that I'm going to put together a travel vlog about my time here, and that's something you don't want to miss. If you're interested in Odessa and Ukraine at all, that's going to be great stuff. It's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. With that said, let's get into part 2 of this episode of the podcast.
Experience.
So Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula, is actually a place where I have some family history. One of my ancestors actually died there in a very famous battle, in the Battle of Balaclava. Should be 1854 if I'm not mistaken, and they died during the Charge of the Light Brigade, which is a very famous military disaster in the British military, and there was actually an Irish battalion of cavalry who were involved, and one of my ancestors, Aroch, his last name, actually died there. So that's part of the reason why I was interested to go to Crimea. And I was in the city of Sevastopol, we pronounce it in English, but Sevastopol in Russian. And I was there, it has this kind of neoclassical architecture. It's a nice city. It is a city, even at that time in 2009, the Russian Black Sea Fleet was based there legally. They did have a lease on a port there, and they were there. And there was actually the only place in all of Ukraine where I saw a lot of Russian flags was actually in Sevastopol. So I go there, and I actually wanted to go and see where my ancestor had died. It was the main reason why I was in the region, but that was actually harder than I expected, and my Russian really let me down because I was trying to explain to the taxi drivers like where were the British graves from the British times, and basically none of them could find them or tell me where they were. They were more like, yeah, if you want to see the Russian or the Turkish or others, then we know where they are, but they didn't know where this was. I did find it on another trip later on. There was actually a memorial there that was quite interesting, so I went and saw that. But on this first trip I wasn't able to find it, so I basically went out in the evening in Sevastopol, and there was a bar that had 2 podium dancers outside, and a lot of people didn't actually maybe have enough the money or didn't want to pay for the drinks in the bar, so we were kind of watching the entertainment, which was these 2 dancers, a guy and a girl, on a podium from outside the bar, because it was actually you could see it from the street. It was just like really close. There was just like a railing or something in between. And I went into the bar, but it was really boring inside. There was kind of no one really hanging out there. So I also decided to go and buy a beer and just hang out and watch the performance, the entertainment from outside. And there was like a lot of people around me. I started talking to one girl who's there. We speak in Russian. Again, my conversation was quite limited, but I have been in Ukraine for probably about 2 weeks at this stage, so I at least gotten used to opening conversations. It was really tough in the beginning, but I had managed to do that. So we start talking. We then take a little bit of a walk. I buy a second beer from a kiosk. They're opened in front of me. We share a beer. We sit down on a bench. We start to kiss. We make out a bit. The conversation is not really super intellectual or anything, because obviously my Russian is very limited, but there's obviously a good rapport there. And then we walk a little bit further along the promenade. There's like an internal flame. There's a memorial to the Second World War and the people who died. Sevastopol was a hero city, just like Odessa, Ukraine, where I'm speaking to you from right now. So there's a big memorial there, this flame I remember, and I remember buying a third beer at a kiosk. We sit down at on a bench in another park very close to my apartment. My apartment was near to the Eternal Flame, and we drink it, and then maybe there's like a third left in her beer. I'd finished mine. I remember putting the beer bottle into the bin that was beside the bench. I take it. I just finished up her beer. I said, hey, let's go to my apartment. It's just over there. She's like, yeah, cool, let's go. So we walk along. And then, we only walked maybe 200 meters to, the entrance of my apartment. I started to feel like really drunk. I was like, wow, this is odd. Because we had only 3 beers. And I really start to feel it. It's very strange. So we opened the door to the building and we started to walk up the stairs. I think it was probably the second floor was where my apartment was. So the ground floor, then the first floor. So this, whatever, if you can call it first or second floor. It depends on the country you're in. But basically we went up 2 flights of stairs. But on the stairs, I really didn't feel well. I started to feel a little bit like unsteady. And I was like, I really don't understand this. Like, this girl seems completely fine. We had 3 beers together. Why am I suddenly so drunk? We walked into my apartment. After that, everything is a little bit of a haze to me. I remember this girl being in the apartment with me. And anyways, everything goes black, I guess. And there's a little bit, I remember being kind of conscious, being light, then dark, and then I wake up, and there was in my studio apartment, there was like a bar at the far end. So then you have the bed, there was kind of a headboard, some faux Greek statue somewhere. It was a pretty kitsch apartment. And then there was the bathroom right in front with some sort of jacuzzi or something there, I remember. And the wardrobe was to the left as the bed as I lay on it, and it was mirrored. So actually when I woke up, I was lying in that side, and I opened my eyes, came to, and I could actually see myself in the reflection because the wardrobe was just all mirrored. So I remember lying there and I see myself, and I had a little bit of a bump on my head here, and I thought, oh yeah, I remember hitting my head. I remember falling over and then hitting my head in something. So I'm probably fallen over on the far side of the room, beside the bar. There was actually a bar area, and I think it maybe hit my head there. So I had this, and I remember, oh yeah, it still hurts a little bit. And then I was like, okay, I'm in my room. I'm completely naked. I look up, my clothes are on the far side of the room. I'm like, okay, I'm on my own. Where is this girl gone? And no sign of her, no trace. I was like, oh, fuck, right? Because my first reaction is, shit, what has happened here? Something bad has happened, right? I've obviously been unconscious, and I have this bump in my head, and there's no chick around anymore. So where is all my stuff? Where is my phone? Because I had an expensive cell phone. Where's my wallet? And where is my passport? So I get up in a panic, run around. My wallet and my passport are actually just on the table, in full view, plain sight. So I was like, cool, okay, they're there. Where's my phone? It's my phone. She must have taken my phone, this girl. It's all very odd that I could have gotten so drunk. At the stage I thought maybe I was drugged. And I just frantically searched around, and then I found my phone in my kind of bag, or man bag, I guess you could call it. The bag that I carry on my laptop in. And I was like, okay, I wonder how it ended up there. That's really odd that it would be in the back of that. But okay, I have everything. I have my laptop. This is just really, really strange. Like, and why was I unconscious for so long? And then I look at the TV screen, and there's like a little display, and it has the days of the week, the first letter of them in Russian, in Cyrillic, and I see the ch letter, and I'm like, okay, that's for Thursday. And I think about it, I'm like, I went out on Tuesday evening. Now that's not possible. That would mean I've been unconscious for 36 hours because it's now Thursday morning. I looked outside, it was like morning time. So I look at my phone, it said Thursday. It doesn't really change. I actually went downstairs to have breakfast. There's a little cafe underneath. And the first question was, what day of the week is it today? And they were like, Thursday. I was like, no, it's really Thursday. I've been unconscious for 36 hours, right? Clearly I've been drugged, right? This is obvious. And I had reflected on the fact that it had been, obviously it was at night when I passed out. Then I remember it being daylight outside, and then I obviously fell back asleep again, and then it was dark again, and then I woke up fine in the morning. So it all kind of made sense. But like, none of my stuff was stolen. And I was a little bit in shock, of course. I had to call the landlady and say, because I was actually supposed to check out on the Thursday at midday, and I was like, yeah, I don't have a train ticket to leave. I'd actually gone to the train station, told me, no, all sold out, you can't get the train. So I had to come back and say, and call her and say, yeah, I need to extend the apartment. Is that possible? She's like, cool. Did you have a really great time in Sevastopol? And I was like, well, it's hard to say. I was asleep for a lot of it, for most of it, 36 hours. She was like, I've never had a client, anyone stay in my apartment, so I had anything bad like this happen to them. What happened to you? I mean, how did you get drugged? So obviously I had no idea. It was either it was in the beer bottle that she was drinking, maybe she passed out, the whole thing was strange. I wasn't robbed, of course. So that remains a mystery to me. This was in 2009, so social media was not very strong at the time. I had not, today probably people exchange Instagram or Facebook or VKontakte, if it was at the time that was legal in Ukraine. Or they would exchange something, but this is more the time of when people exchange phone numbers. Obviously that hadn't happened, so I had no idea how to even contact this girl afterwards. I'm normally asked 2 questions about this experience, and the reason I'm telling you this is just basically be careful if you ever go to Sevastopol. And that too, it's hard for me to read the advice because I had actually seen the bottles open. So yeah, really, really mysterious about exactly what happened. So maybe if you have heard of something similar or you experienced something similar yourself and you're watching this, please leave a comment below about your experience, because this really helps this community that we're growing of people who are really enthusiastic about traveling to Eastern Europe. And this is something that I do hear happening a lot. I'll get into that in a second. So I'm going to ask 2 questions about this experience. Number 1, did I go to the police? Well, what would I say to the police in this situation? I wasn't robbed, right? So I was asleep and probably drugged. So I wasn't going to go to a Crimean police station and say, hey, I have all my stuff. I wasn't robbed, but I'd like you to go investigate a non-existent crime because I think I was drugged. And the police in Crimea had a really bad reputation at the time for corruption. So I certainly didn't want to go to a police station and tell them I have money and I have my phone and all this kind of stuff in case they decide that they need to create a reason to get their hands on it. And second thing is, did I go to a hospital? Now that would have established, probably what I was given, that I was drugged and what it was, etc. But the idea in that state of going to a hospital and having them, I assume, draw blood, just didn't appeal to me. I didn't want to see the inside of a Crimean hospital. The idea of Crimean hospitals, maybe from history, this whole thing with the Crimean War, and Florence Nightingale having to, what she had to deal with there. I just had this image in my head. No, I don't want to see the inside of a Crimean hospital. And in general, the public hospitals here in Ukraine leave a lot to be desired. My friends have gone to them and been pretty shocked, so I'm glad I didn't do that. So for me, it's a complete mystery, but yeah, that's what happened. I lost 36 hours of my life unconscious in Sevastopol. So be careful. And I have heard a lot of stories. I have had friends who I've met here who were British, my British friend in particular, and he explained that he used to live in Sevastopol, and this was actually quite a common thing that used to happen. And he actually told me that a lot of people are dragged and their bodies are dumped in the water because it's obviously by the sea after they're robbed. And so that I was really, really lucky. About what happened. Maybe the drugs were in her drink, maybe my drink, it's unclear, but definitely there was something really, really that you need to be careful of that happened to me. So if you go to Sevastopol or to Crimea in particular, then just be really careful. I haven't heard of other instances in Ukraine where people have been drugged and they've been given an overdose and they never woke up. Normally it involves some sort of, some girl who invited them somewhere and drugged them. My British friend also was drugged, who lived in Sevastopol, and they had used, it was like a group of 2 girls and a guy who acted in a team. He had a very unpleasant experience because actually the police then shook him down for money later on. So that was another reason why I felt vindicated in not going to the police in Crimea at the time. He told me it was quite intimidating. They threatened to falsely accuse him of crimes, actually, in order to make him pay them because they actually did retrieve his stolen property and they wanted to keep it. So that was a problem at the time, so just be really careful and try to use your judgment, whether you can trust someone you're with. That's what I would say there. And if you ever feel uneasy or someone's trying to push you into drinking something, just be really careful. Maybe, I had actually seen the beer bottles being open, but you want to verify all that kind of stuff. It's not the only country that this happens, of course. Unfortunately, hear about happening in Brazil and Colombia as well, places that I'm also interested in traveling to, but you want to just, use your common sense. But if you have an experience or any other advice, just write us in the comment section, leave a comment below the video. So that happens. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm fine, more or less, right? I got drugged, and I actually had been previously drugged before in Greece, and again, nothing bad had happened to me. I wasn't robbed, and that was a very short one. I've been unconscious probably for an hour or two, but that's nothing to do with Eastern Europe. So, moving along, I came to this city. So I've already given you two kind of crazy things that happened to me on the first trip. I've been effectively accused of espionage, being a Russian spy here in Ukraine, and then second of all, being drugged for 36 hours. I think that constitutes a pretty like wild first experience. And like I was here for 3 weeks the first time. As I said, like there were a lot of cool things happening. I went to Kazantip. I just had an amazing time at parties and stuff. But then I came to Odessa. Experience number 3 that you need to learn from to take care of yourself on a trip to Ukraine. So I came here, and time I didn't know anything about the city. It was the first time. I only had 2 nights. It was on the weekend, and I decided to go to what a lot of tourists still do today, which is go to Arcadia, which is the main touristic strip. At the time in 2009, in my defense, it was not as touristic and tacky as it is today. I definitely don't recommend that you go there necessarily today to this part of the city, but at the time Ibiza Club was still pretty good. At least I thought so when I went there originally. And it's a club that's quite famous for its design and its music. I guess more or less its design. I don't necessarily think it's music, but it does have a lot of big concerts there, which are interesting, and encourage you to go to concerts like from artists that you obviously enjoy, big international stars as well as ones from the maybe Russian, Ukrainian pop world also play there. So I go to this club and I'm hanging out, and of course, as I said, my Russian was not very good, so talking to girls was a real struggle, and I go into that in another episode of the podcast, previous episodes, about what it was like trying to interact without Russian and without understanding the dating culture here. So I'm standing at the bar, and there's some pretty girls nearby. I start talking to them. One of them seems really cool. She actually speaks English, and she tells me she's a lawyer. I'm also a lawyer by profession. I've just flown in from Brussels, where I was working as a lawyer. I was working at the European Commission, in the legal service there. And so I'm standing at the bar, I'm talking to her, the rapport is really great. I'm thinking, oh, this is super cool, right? So I've met this cool, pretty girl. We're talking, her friends leave, the friends she was with. So we're having a great rapport from my point of view. We're chatting, and then she says, oh, my friends are gone, I just need to call my friends, I have no credit, can I call on your phone? So I have my new cell phone there. I hand her the cell phone. The way that the club is laid out, there are like these kind of like partitions that are like kind of in this wave, I guess, kind of structure like this, so you can kind of move around between them a little bit. So she's like, hey, and she doesn't seem to be able to hear her friend on the phone, and she just moves behind it, I mean obviously to hear her friend. And I'm kind of there 7, 8, 10 seconds, I'm like, where did she go? And suddenly I look behind the partition and she's not there. I'm like, that's odd, where did she go to? So I started walking around, keeping an eye, but this is near the end of the night. It's probably 4 a.m. or something around that kind of time. So there aren't actually so many people in the club, so they're actually closed off the outer lying parts of the club, so everyone's kind of corralled into the center who's there because they're just about to close it down in the next half an hour, and kind of people go to the exit. So I started walking around, and after a minute or two, I become a little bit frantic because I'm like, damn, where did she go? Where's my new phone, right? This is something the equivalent, I think it was actually the Nokia smartphone. Yes, they were actually popular for a very short time. And it was equivalent of the iPhone, just a little bit different looking. It was kind of the rival. So basically it's the same, like in your own mind of losing it, like an iPhone X or something, whatever. Because I'm speaking to you in September 2018. So I'm like really frantic. I start looking around, start walking faster and faster, can't see her anywhere in the club. I'm like, oh my God, how did I fall for this? How did I fall for this? This girl has stolen my bloody phone, right? And I was naive enough to trust her, first of all, because obviously I had a high level of trust, felt comfortable, she spoke English, we have the same profession, and she's gone. And then I see her friends there. I run over, I start trying to communicate with them. Where is blah, 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 whatever her name was. I've even forgotten, let's call her, I don't know, Natasha. That's a little bit stereotypical, fine. So where is Natasha? Get in, Natasha. They were just like, clearly like, I don't know, go away, right? They were not very helpful. I don't know if they were in on my phone going missing or not, but basically I couldn't even talk to them properly in Russian, so they were just like, no. So I was like, what am I going to do? Because like, she's not here at the club. I can see, I verified she's not here anymore. My phone is obviously with her and gone, so I need to figure out where she is. Like, I'll just have to take a risk and just run somewhere and hope that I bump into her. So basically, yeah, I've been robbed. and the chance of getting this back is virtually zero, right? Because the person's obviously left the club. And with my phone, and they're local, and I'm probably never going to see them again. This is my first night out in Odessa, and I think I stayed 2 nights, so I wasn't even going to stay very long in the city. This time I was looking like I was definitely going to have to go to the police station to report it, at least for insurance purposes. So I take a risk. At the time, Arcadia has this long strip, which it does to the entrance, and I thought the only place you can get a taxi is actually at the top of it. Turns out there's actually a second place that I now know about, but at the time I didn't know about that, and that was fine because I just basically, one place I think where if you had to leave, you have to get a taxi. There's actually several ways to leave, but anyways, this is the only one I knew as a tourist on my first trip, so I just started sprinting along this long strip. At the time, it was kind of just 2 narrow paths leading up, so I basically had to shout at people in front of me as I was running down past them, just like basically cursing at myself that I was so stupid, that I was so naive, that I had been taken advantage of and robbed in such a silly way, such an easy way. So I'm running as fast as I can. It takes like me maybe 60 seconds of sprinting, and then I can kind of see the entrance to Arcadia, and I can see the taxis. At the time, of course, there's being able to order an app, so you basically had to call a taxi, which I couldn't do because I didn't speak Russian, so I was always having to negotiate with the taxi mafia at the entrance to Arcadia or anywhere else in the city or anywhere else in the country basically to get a taxi, which of course was a lot more expensive than calling on the phone, probably about 50% more expensive. I didn't realize that. Another reason to have learned Russian. So I'm sprinting, and suddenly I see the outline of a girl wearing the same clothes in the distance. I'm like, oh, that could be her. So I just accelerate as hard as I can, I'm just like a full throttle, like, not that I could last that long after a night out. I was a lot fitter than I was today at the time. And I started running, and then I realized, yes, it's definitely her. She's like at a taxi, she's leaning into the window, probably agreeing the price with the taxi driver, wherever she's going. She moves over to the back door, right, just to open it up. I'm really close, I'm really accelerating, and I see in the back pocket a bulge. It looks like a phone in her back pocket. I just hone in on the phone. As you're about to come up to something, you just have to decelerate, otherwise you're going to smack right into it. So I just started decelerating, my hone in on the phone in her back pocket. At that exact moment when I reached her, because obviously she heard some commotion as I started to sprint into her, I just got my hand on the back pocket just as she turned around. So she's facing me, and I pull up the phone out of her back pocket, and then she reaches up with her hand as I have it, and she grabs the phone in one hand, I have in the other hand, and we're kind of struggling here like this, but obviously I'm a good bit stronger, so I just, after maybe a second of struggling, the phone pops out, and it's in my hand, and she just looks at me, she goes, "Fuck you." And then she got in the taxi, and I was super shocked. I didn't even react. I was just like, I got my phone back. I can't believe I'm actually holding it in my hand again after having been robbed of it. And she got in the taxi and took off. So, I had the phone back. I guess this is a moral for you guys about trusting people. What can I say? Most people in this situation, they're not going to rob you or something. It's not like I think Ukraine is super dangerous. But there you see, when I was a naive tourist on my first trip, what happened to me. This thing almost disappeared so easily like that because, I trusted someone who I shouldn't have trusted. And that's something that you just learn. So that's another lesson for you guys, just to, just be careful about who you trust and how much of a rapport that you really built up, especially if you're using English, because that's obviously what most tourists, they rely on when they come here. And actually my friends and my clients, as I've said often enough on this channel, they tell me that's the number one issue they have when they come here is the language barrier. So if you have the opportunity, then definitely before you come here, invest in Russian. It will go a long way. So if you've enjoyed this 2-part episode of the Vodka Vodcast about my first trip to Ukraine, my first trip to this country, then please give it a big thumbs up. It helps the channel out immensely. If you're a subscriber, of course, so squeeze that red subscribe button and whack the notification bell beside it, because that way you'll be notified when I upload new videos. I'm coming to the end of my stay here in Odessa in Ukraine on the Black Sea. It's been another amazing summer. I think I spent about 2 months here in total, and I'm just working on filming and getting the last vlogs of the summer done from here. I actually made some content with Danny from Got a World to See. You've probably already seen the video with him, and also the podcast episode, as this one, it was actually last week's episode. So those are done, and now I'm going to finish up with just like some new killer content. It's probably going to be my best content I think I'll have made. The channel is growing really strongly. This has been a really phenomenal summer in terms of creating content. I hope you'll stay tuned and interact with me. And if you do meet me here or in somewhere else, like you've been coming up on average one person per day, tell me how I've inspired you to come to Odessa in particular. So this was really for me a very fulfilling and rewarding experience, not just because I got to hang out in my favorite city in Eastern Europe for the summer, but also because I got to meet a lot of you guys who were here traveling and hear your stories, what motivated you, your concerns. So just keep doing that and writing to me, because yeah, that's why I make these videos. It's the community element. It just really that I can help you as much as I can. I have, of course, a few courses that I put together. One is finished, which is a language learning course. I'm going to be opening up this Russian Academy pretty soon, so you can go and check that out. I'll put a link below in the description for that. Also my dating and my traveling courses, get into those. They're still at beta phase when I'm making this, but that just means it's cheaper for you to get on board, and you get actually a lot more personal contact with me if you get in now. So if you do have questions, I had a guy who's a big viewer who's always leaving comments on this channel. Let me actually just check his name. Alan something, well, something like Alan. If I get actually reception here, I can actually see it. Aviad, I think it's Danieli. Okay, so like for example, I helped out one of you guys who watches me a lot, Aviad. Yesterday actually, he was struggling. He'd actually gone to Kharkiv, a city where I made a vlog about recently, and he told me he just was really unable to go and interact with local girls. He was there hoping to meet his, on his trip, and he was just really tongue-tied. And I told him, listen, you have a challenge. Next there are 3 girls. You got to open them. You got to at least say hi. You got to do something. You're not allowed to write back to me until you've completed this mission. And even if it's all 3 of them ignore you, it doesn't matter. Just go talk to 3 and then come back to me when you've done it. A little bit over an hour later, I get a message back, thank you so much. And it really inspired him and it really helped him. He said he was actually thinking of changing his flight before I sent him this challenge. So that just shows having this kind of personal touch and personal coaching is so valuable for you if you want to develop and grow and overcome things that hold you back. So that's something also to think about for yourself. I do, of course, provide that kind of coaching in coaching packages. You can write me an email at connorklein@lazarexperience.com. I'll also write that below in the show notes if you're listening to this, or in the description here on the YouTube video if you're watching me. And with that, I encourage you to get involved as much as possible in communicating with me or writing comments, or if you see me in person, just saying hi. So I'm going to stop rambling on, going way over time on this another episode of the Vodka Podcast. I'm going to be back next week. It's going to be what episode are we up to then? I'm not even sure. I think it's episode 10 next week. This is episode 9. So yeah, you're going to get another episode from me, Connor Klein. I wish you a very good afternoon if you're in the same time zone, evening if you're heading Asia, or morning if you are in the US when I'm making this video. Do svidania, do pobачення. See you in the next one. Ciao.
SAR Experience.